Welcome everyone to today's show. On the agenda today, we'll cover AI and the threat landscape from more of a wide lens perspective. And after that, we'll look at some findings that are hot off the presses and are just published today about the latest data we've uncovered about a pretty wild trend in malicious attachments, as well as the latest trends in attacks in Microsoft versus Google environments, and some very interesting findings on which industries are the most attacked. My name is Elliot Baker, and as always, thrilled to have Maxime Cartier here today.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
So, to frame the conversation, let's kick things off with a look at the cost and the prevalence of phishing in the age of AI. 68% of breaches contain the human element, according to the Verizon DBIR. 80 to 95% of cyber attacks begin with a phish, and that is according to the Comcast Business Cybersecurity Threat Report. According to IBM, the average cost of a phishing breach is $4.88 million. And then there's this statistic from SlashNext, 4,151% increase in the total volume of phish that are hitting the filters. So these numbers tell a story. Human-targeted attacks are becoming a bigger and more expensive problem as AI makes them better, faster, and cheaper for criminals. But according to the most recent IBM Cost of Data Breach report, it's not all bad news. And I think the same thing is true for the Verizon report as well. So, Maxime, is that true? Is there any good news this time around?
Yes, there are some good news, and I feel like we need them in this world. So there are some great news. While threats are getting more sophisticated, with AI, as we will get into in this discussion today, it seems also that AI is helping our defenses improve as well. So I think that will be kind of a common theme for this webinar. AI as a tool both for evil and for good. But so here's the good news. For the first time, the Verizon DBIR, the data breach investigation report, found that good training does indeed work. Security training makes a difference. They found that people who had been trained in the past 30 days were 4 times more likely to report a phish than those who had not been trained within the past 30 days. And we'll dig deeper, but I think that was first like a very good news of the data breach investigation report. And going back to the cost of breaches, the IBM report, some good news as well there, because for the first time in 5 years, IBM found that the cost of data breaches have declined by 9%. They state in the report that the reason for this drop is also AI helping security teams defend their organizations. And according to the report, organizations were also able to identify and contain a breach within 241 days, which is still crazy long. A lot can happen in 241 days, but it's the lowest it's been in 9 years. So yeah, some much needed good news.
Well, it's great to get some good news, and I guess we're going to drill down into some of this good news. So this was really nice to see with the Verizon DVR, which is the Bible of cybersecurity data. And this year they got more into human risk and cybersecurity training more than ever before. And they seem to answer that burning question, does training work? So what stood out to you, Maxime? And by the way, everyone, Maxime participated in the Verizon DBIR last year with Hoxhunt Data and will do so again this year.
Yeah, exactly. We participated in last year's report and we're participating again this year. The team is collecting the data at the moment to share it with Verizon, I think, next month. So that's ongoing at the moment. And I'm very encouraged by the findings of this report because every year, this Bible of security, as you said, Elliot, they report that the human element is part of most breaches. But for the first time last year, they also said that, yes, training actually works and quadruples the phishing reporting rate, at least when it's been done in the past 30 years. 30 years, 30 days, sorry. The first thing that I just want to point out in this study is that it's data that comes from 7,000 organizations. So it's a very large sample, which really makes the result a lot more robust than a lot of other academic research that we've seen, which is typically done on one single organization. So here it's 7,000 organizations and the data set from all those organizations that has been able to get this result. And then, as I was saying, not 30 years, but 30 days. It's the time frame that they've chosen. And I think it makes a big difference that if they would have chosen 60 days, 90 days, or 6 months, then we wouldn't have seen a difference anymore, right? So the recency of the training is very important, and every 3 months even might not be enough. You need to have this reminder every month. The second thing maybe to point out is that the Wall Street Journal recently published the fourth article in 3 years that cited a study that basically found that security awareness training and phishing simulations don't work. And I've seen it everywhere on LinkedIn. There's also this UC San Diego study that has been at Black Hat. They presented at Black Hat. And when you look beyond the headlines and you actually read the whole studies, what do studies say? That some models of security awareness training don't work. They mention annual compliance training. They mention one-size-fits-all phishing simulation. They mention basically outdated security awareness training models and what is, in my opinion, actually bad training. So we agree 100% with these results. Bad training does not improve behavior. We need to stop doing bad training and adopt more modern training models nowadays.
Absolutely. Behavior is absolutely critical. And let's just pause on this figure from SlashNext a moment. That between 2022 to 2024, the total volume of phishing attacks caught at the filter level has risen by over 4,000% since the advent of ChatGPT. Now, they make no claim as one causing the other with AI and more attacks, but, well, whatever the correlation, that's an astonishing figure. But it doesn't really tell the most important part of the story, which is how many of these attacks actually bypass filters and land in inboxes. So, Maxime, what does AI let attackers do to help them scale up their campaigns?
Yes, a few things. First, from volume standpoint, we know that it's really easy to create. I mean, a lot of us use AI to write our emails, right? Or to answer emails nowadays. So attackers can also use AI to create more and different phishing campaigns with a lot less efforts. Not only that, but of higher quality, right? In terms of better writing, no grammatical mistakes, no spelling errors. But the traditional phishing kits still let attackers create campaigns that are good at sending thousands of malicious emails at a time. So it's not just a question of being able to create more or even just of creating more qualitative in the sense of just spelling mistakes. I think more importantly, what this is also bringing along with the increased volume is that AI allows criminals to be much better at targeting, so at spear phishing.
Right. And so we'll get to the quality piece of the AI attack issue. First, there was a report by Viper Security that 40% of all phishing attacks targeting businesses were generated by AI. 40%. So there's over a 4,000% increase in attacks that hit the filter. And 40% of them, according to Viper, are AI written. So this represents billions and billions of malicious emails written by AI, if that's a correct finding. But the numbers that we see in terms of sheer volume of attacks that evade the filters and get into the email environment are a bit different. We see that it's under 5%. And Mimecast projected earlier this year that it was about 12%. Now, there are some caveats to be had with our figures and others like them. From what I understand, there isn't yet great tooling that can identify AI versus non-AI generated malicious messages at scale. So it's still a bit of a manual analysis. Even so, we can pretty confidently say that far fewer than 40% of malicious emails that bypass filters and hit inboxes were written by AI. So, Maxime, can you tell us the reasons for that discrepancy between findings at the filter level and findings at the inbox layer? And why is that difference important?
Well, the reason why the difference is important is because if there's a huge increase in attacks, but they're blocked by the filters, as a security practitioner, I don't care, right? Like they're blocked. Fantastic. Great. I don't have anything to do. What really matters is the attacks that make it into the inbox, that get past the filters. So those are the ones we need to know about. Those are the ones that we need to know what tactics are used, what themes are used, and how we can train people about them, and not about all the ones that are blocked by the filter. We are seeing a trend that AI is growing in popularity. As I mentioned before, those kind of phishing kits, they're still being used. It's going to take time. I don't know if we'll see a full shift at all of phishing kits using AI completely to automate. But those figures that we have here, those figures that we have on the slide here, also they're a few months old. So I'd be curious to see how it has evolved in the past 6 months and see if this is growing. But anyway, we both don't want to ignore what's growing, like these AI attacks and deepfake attacks, but also realize that, okay, they're growing at the moment. They don't represent our major risk yet, right? We have a lot of attacks or phishing attacks that are still kind of traditional and classic. So never too early to prepare, but also remember what your biggest risks are.
Right. Well said. I kind of think of it as like the Three Little Pigs fable. The big bad wolf is coming, and you know you must build a house that it can't blow down. So why would you use straw or wood when you need to use brick? And in this analogy, brick is AI solutions and tooling. But anyhow, what is the most basic starting point for what we'd call an AI-enabled attack?
Yeah, I like that it says 101 here because the starting point is just opening ChatGPT and asking it to write an email in whatever language you want. We see here the example of how easy it can be for a social engineering to generate an attack using nothing but a free version of an LLM. It's ChatGPT in this example, but it can be any that is used. And while the result might seem maybe a bit generic, it allows cybercriminal to let AI do some of the heavy lifting, can really speed up things. So again, getting attacks faster, cheaper, maybe more convincing, and supporting multiple languages to increase their reach. So this is actually what our threat analysts tell us anecdotally, that when they look at the threat reports, they don't see any grammar mistakes or spelling errors anymore. It's very, very uncommon. So it's actually maybe one of the red flag of phishing emails is not anymore to see that they're poorly written or with bad pacing, but maybe too well written or with the M dash, Anyway, they're just showing that it's really easy to create a phishing email. And even if there are some guardrails that are in public-facing LLMs like ChatGPT, it's also very easy to bypass those guardrails and get it to do what you want to do if you just say that it's for education or for a play that you're writing.
Okay, so that brings us to 102 if the previous slide was 101, and this is the next phase of evolution in AI-enabled attacks. AI agents are disrupting the social engineering landscape. Hoxhunt research led by our CTO and co-founder Guru Ovis discovered that by March of 2025, after 2 years of training and evolution, AI agents had surpassed our elite human red teams in phishing effectiveness. Their performance improved by 55% in relation to humans between 2023 to 2025. That was back in March, and the AI agents keep on getting smarter and better. So, Maxime, we talked about how AI can boost sheer volume of attacks, but why does AI supercharge spear phishing as well?
Yeah, it's all about targeting. Malicious message will work best when it's personalized to the target. The more you know about someone or about an organization, the more you can use this information to create more personalized scams and make them trust you. So that's what both ethical and non-ethical attackers are doing. They're doing open source intelligence and trying to get as much information about someone or an organization as possible to find the flaws and to use that information to make people trust them. And this is, even as an ethical hacker, I would say this can be a fun activity to do, but it's also very time consuming. It takes a lot of time to find this information and to find ways to use it. And the way that AI is changing this today is that you can ask it to do it for you, to just do that research and use the deep research tools of ChatGPT or Gemini to do that open source intelligence. And they can do it in just a few minutes and find everything there is to know about someone or an organization in 5 minutes. I actually did it on myself. I created a simple prompt and I asked it to find all the information that was public about myself online. And 10 minutes later, it came back with the 16-page report with 27 unique sources. That was basically a biography
Wow.
of my whole life, right? And I work in cybersecurity, and I feel like, I'm aware about this and I'm very careful about what I put about myself online. But still, there were things in this report that I had no idea were publicly available on the web. And so I could take them off. They're offline now, thanks to me creating this report and seeing what's available. But again, that's something that saves a lot of time for the criminals, right? Instead of having to do all this research manually, they can have the AI do that research for them. And after that, create spear phishing emails directly, right? Do the research, create 5 phishing emails that you'll send to the company.
Yeah, that really clearly encapsulates the danger. That's that you can do things that normally would have taken who knows how long, whether it's days or months to go after a single target. To be able to do that at the push of a button with a prompt is really kind of scary.
I want to remind also that the situation is not hopeless, right? It seems scary, but the same way that AI is doing it for the criminals, again, we can do it. And Hoxhunt has developed something called the spear-phishing agent to train people in a more personalized and engaging way. So also looking at, the information that we have about them, they're given by the company to create more targeted phishing simulations.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. This is hopeful, folks. We're not all doom and gloom here, but that's an absolutely critical point. Is that every time you see AI being used for an evil purpose, you can also reconfigure it to be used for a good purpose. And this is one of the greatest examples we have of being able to at scale train people with very personalized training. So great point. Thank you for keeping it on the sunny side. Now we're getting into the kind of fun and freaky stuff. Deepfakes. Deepfakes are perhaps the most concerning use of AI. I think we're all familiar with the concept. AI can generate video and audio of anyone doing or saying pretty much anything. It's fun for cat videos and Taylor Swift memes, but the criminal applications are vast. They can really supercharge a phishing attack. Many of the cybersecurity leaders who we have both spoken with, I think, Maxime, have said that they have encountered a deepfake attack at their companies of some kind. It's usually an impersonation of an executive, like what happened with what you can see on this slide with YouTube back in March. It could have been video or audio or some combination. I just personally, we had a deepfake attack at a family member recently, and it's an unsettling experience. You see someone you might know and trust, and they are telling you to do something really odd, or they could be crying. This wasn't what happened to us, but they could be crying and telling you that they have been kidnapped and need a ransom to be paid. So I actually spoke with a person, U.S. government cyber defense, who said they and their family members actually get so many attacks that they use code words to verify conversations. So we're talking about parents with their kids at a young age, talking about cybersecurity and this very kind of complex and advanced attacks as a dinner table concept. So Maxime, what can you tell us that happened here with the YouTube social media scam and kind of break down the danger?
Yeah, of course. So we have a few examples of actual deepfake attacks, but first, as you mentioned, they can be used in many ways. You can deepfake a video conferencing call in real time, so Teams or Zoom. You can deepfake a phone call, you can include a deepfake video or a voice message in an email, in a chat in Teams, in WhatsApp. And by the way, Elliot, I hope that you don't mind, but I've been creating a deepfake of you too with some
Oh
simple.
no.
So I'll
Please
show
do.
we'll look at that together just after. It's a bit scary.
Okay. Okay. I'm kind of a scary looking person in general, so I can only imagine.
But don't worry, it's only for research and educational purposes, so no one will get hurt. And unlike this YouTube scam, actually, that was reported by YouTube in March of this year, so YouTube, they warned that the video creators of YouTube were being targeted by hackers with an AI-generated video of the YouTube CEO. And so the deepfake message that with the fake CEO was saying that there were changes in the monetization policies of the videos, and it provided malicious links to phishing sites that can install malware or steal credentials. So that was used to target the content creators. And in the US, there were more than 100,000 deepfake related attacks last year, or roughly an attack every 5 minutes. So it's been growing a lot. And I think that the stats we're going to see for 2025 are going to show an even bigger jump. Yeah, but there's some more examples here. So first, I think one of the biggest ones that was revealed, a finance worker at the British engineering giant Arup was duped into attending a video call with people he believed were the chief financial officer and other members of the staff, but all of them were actually deepfake recreations. And so the imposters, they convinced that finance worker to send $25 million to a fraudulent account. Then, as you said, Elliot, actually every medium and large organization I talk to nowadays, they tell me that yes, they've seen at least one attack, a deepfake attack in their organization, but they don't speak about it publicly. Obviously, the one company that did though is Wiz. Wiz, the CEO and co-founder, said at an event that the company had been targeted by deepfake attacks. Dozens of employees receiving a voice message from someone posing as him, trying to get credentials. And what's maybe a little bit funny about this one is that the employees were able to say that it doesn't sound like the CEO because the CEO has public speaking anxiety. And the deepfake did not have that anxiety in its voice. So they were like, it doesn't sound like him, right? So they reported it, and that's why it ended up in the news here. But yeah, that's one example that came into the news. But again, when I talk to people, I see that that's a real concern because that's something that's really happening.
So here's an example of what a deepfake video looks like. And if you don't mind, Maxime, I'd like to just show you and the audience the quality of a deepfake that can be ripped from just 5 minutes of online footage, or less than that, actually. And this one was done by our colleague Frida using a cheap, common tool.
Deepfakes are getting so good, it's almost impossible to tell what's real.
They're being used by attackers to impersonate executives, asking people to click malicious links or transfer money on Teams or other channels. They can look completely legitimate outside.
But here's the thing. That wasn't Elliot, and that wasn't me. That was made with deepfake technology.
What used to be science fiction is now your average Tuesday afternoon Teams call. So if something ever feels a little bit off, listen to your gut. Always trust, but verify.
And are you ready to see something that I think is even more realistic?
Okay.
So we just made this also with Frida, using some webinar footage from the last webinar that you did. It's a public video that is on YouTube, and using just that, honestly, it's not 5 minutes, it's 30 seconds from that webinar, we were able to create the deepfake that you can share now.
Okay, I'm scared.
Hi, Maxine. Listen, I'll go straight to the point because my connection seems to be terrible. I've made some changes to the slides for the webinar we have today. Let me add the link to the chat. There we go. Check it out.
How do you feel, Elliot, when you see this?
You know, it's like having your soul ripped out of you and kind of made to perform for the world. But yeah, that's an amazing example. Well, my question is, how did you feel the first time you saw that? And like, it felt pretty plausible.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the context really helps. We're working on a webinar together, so this message of let's review the slide. I made some changes to the slide. Can you check them just before the webinar? It's highly contextual, so it would be a pretty hard, pretty difficult, either simulation or scam. But I was more surprised by the video itself, by the fact that, because of course I've seen like a couple of weeks ago there was Sora 2 that was released, and what Sora 2 is making is crazy to watch. But to me, this video, it looks and sounds exactly like you. And it's not static at all. Your head is moving in all directions. It's even looking down when you're about to send the link. There's the mic a little bit in front of your face. It doesn't create any anomalies. So, when we're going to get into that in the next slide, but we used to say that, hey, look for some anomalies, look at the hands, look at the face moving from left and right. You cannot say this anymore, and it's just going to get more and more realistic. So we need to look at something else.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up those details, Maxime. That is true. Now that you mention it, it was pretty remarkable how normally AI doesn't do really well with head movements and going behind a microphone. That was really crisp, really clear. The only thing is that that gave me a really good hair day, I think better than normal. So kind of like when you have to look for grammar problems, you have to look for hair problems also with these things. So as you just said, there are some clues for spotting deepfake content. So do you have any tips for the audience about spotting deepfakes, Maxine?
Yeah, and of course there are some on the slide here, but again, I don't think they're extremely relevant, and we can't ask people to look for these digital anomalies, artifacts, and lip syncing that is not perfect. I mean, when you're on a Teams call and the connection is not great, the lip syncing is not perfect, and it's reality, right? So it's like really difficult to ask people to go for this. And I think what's much more important is to use the same advice that we give for any type of social engineering, whether it's phishing, whether it's deepfakes. It's more about, is this something that is unexpected, right? Does it create a strong emotional reaction, whether it's fear or anxiety, pressure, authority, right? And in these cases, we need to be skeptical and just take a breath and take a pause and take a moment to verify. So anything unexpected, any strong emotional reaction, take a breath, pause, and then verify. So always cross-check the information or the request with a non-trusted source. So for example, if you receive a video or an audio message from your colleague, consider calling them directly. Same thing if you receive an email or a social message. If they contact you via Teams, call them, right? So use different channels to verify the authenticity of the message and of the sender. You can also say, as Elliot mentioned, a safe word. That's the advice of the National Cybersecurity Alliance and some other organizations, especially in private context, that have a safe word with your family in particular, maybe with your closest friend, so that you can ask for this information or ask them personal questions, right? To know they are. And same thing, just verify on the side. They call you, send them a text message at the same time to see is this the right person, and just listen to your gut, right? Most time, if something feels off, it probably is, right? So if something feels off, trust your instinct and double check, report.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking about an instinct now, like really developing a new survival instinct for the digital jungle that we're all traveling in for most of our days nowadays. So as remarkable and as scary as the deepfakes are, I think that we do need to kind of take a step back and remember that they are not our greatest risk. And this chart is developed from Verizon IBM X-Force data, and it aligns with our own findings. And the biggest takeaway is that phishing remains the dominant vector of social engineering attacks. Targeted BEC and other forms of spear-phishing attacks have always been the biggest threat, and they are getting more dangerous for reasons that we've covered here and that Maxime has explained. Meanwhile, phishing and vishing are growing rapidly with mobile targeted attacks and with AI voice deepfakes. And again, deepfakes attacks that impersonate executives are rising fast, but the majority of threats are still located in phishing emails. Would you agree, Maxime, about just the idea of as dangerous and as much of a threat that deepfakes will become in our everyday cybersecurity lives, that we must keep our eyes on the prize, so to speak, in terms of risk management at its greatest source?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, these are new vectors that we do need to raise awareness about and train people about, but phishing is still the biggest threat. So maybe we can actually look now at some of the top 2025 phishing trends, and you will see that there is no deepfake in that actually. So at Hoxhunt, we receive more than 500,000 real threats reported by end users, so all of the employees at our customers across the globe, 500,000 threats, and we analyze them all. And based on this is what we've found on the slide are the most common tactics and trends of 2025. So if I look first at the bottom left, the top file types, we can see that the PDF files are still king. They're still one of the most common attachment that is found in phishing emails. They often include a link or a QR code that leads to a credential harvester. And sometimes instead of a link, they include a phone number that will put you in contact with the criminal, with the fake service desk. And it can also be fake invoices. So the most common one. And then we have number 2 on the podium, something new, SVG files. They're growing fast because they look like harmless images, but SVGs code, they can hide scripts, links, and dynamic content. And we'll talk more about them in the upcoming slides. And then we have HTML, which is the quick path to credential harvester once again. If we look at the brands, top brands that are impersonated, no surprise here, Microsoft dominates, whether it's Office 365, Planner, or SharePoint, they're impersonated constantly. And then we have Meta, second. Meta, Instagram, Facebook. They're also high on the list. This is a bit newer. They're often tied to scams around policy violations or copyright claims with the goal to steal social media accounts, not personal social media accounts, but the company social media accounts, and get access to advertising budgets. So those are on the rise. Then if you look at the keywords, they're still about money transfer, urgency, advance fee, nothing new here. And for the top tactics, we have file sharing schemes. So everything that is like fake DocuSign, fake OneDrive, email with a link to a document that can maybe raise your curiosity or is an urgent thing to be acted upon. And these ones work because we do receive every day as part of our jobs those emails, right? The DocuSign and the OneDrive or Google email with documents. So it can be hard, it can be tricky to recognize the legitimate from the scammy one. Then we have HR impersonations. So that's messages that seem to come from your HR department with, for example, new benefit policies or salary increases, often linking to credential harvesters once again. And an old one, but still is extremely common, so it must be working. It's strange because it's been used for years and years and part of our top for a long time. Fake voicemails. They still bypass the filters, and they're still reported a lot. Fake voicemail, phishing messages. The reason that I think it's super cool to see those tactics, see this overview of the trends, is that if you're doing today your phishing simulations mostly manually, right, and you want to choose what's the next thing that you're going to train people about and what's the next phishing simulation that you can send, take a screenshot maybe of this slide to see, okay, this is what is actually happening. These are the emails that are bypassing the filters and arriving to your employees' mailboxes. So this is what matters and what we need to train people about.
Yes, absolutely. Say it again and say it loud. It's so important to know what's actually happening within your inbox environment. It's so important to have people reporting these threats and being able to act on those reports. That's a critical insight and tip. So yeah, you mentioned the SVGs, and this was really eye-opening. Like I was pretty shocked when I saw just how big of a change has happened here in the email attachment portion of the threat landscape. And this is hot off the presses research. We are actually publishing this today in a mini report. And Maxime, can you break down the numbers here and why this is important to know with regards to how attackers keep changing their tactics?
Yeah, so as you can see in the numbers on the graph on the left, SVG were barely part of the reported threats in 2024 and before. And when I say barely, it's 0.1% in 2024. But this year, they average around 5% of all threats being reported each month. And they even climbed to up to 15% of all reported threats in March of this year. So this is a prime example, I would say, of how they are just changing their tactics and trying to find new tools for old tricks. We've seen the same thing happening with malicious QR codes in the past. It was in October of 2023, if I remember correctly, where all of a sudden the majority of phishing threats that were reported to us had QR codes. And obviously this has been blocked more and more by the filters, and people have been receiving them, so they're more aware about them. So we see them less nowadays, but SVG is having the same moment this year. And I think it's a really attractive format for hackers because, as I said just before, SVG, they seem to be just an image, right? So a lot of filters, they consider them, at least, I don't know if they changed now, but they consider them as an image. So it's safe. But actually it's code, and they can contain full websites can be created in an SVG file. So these really allow attackers to hide malicious content inside those files and trick people into loading malicious files, malicious websites, and redirecting them to credential harvesters again.
Yeah. And it's just like you said earlier in the webinar today about how if a bunch of things hit the filter and don't get through to inboxes, then that's great. You don't really have to care about it, but you do have to pay attention when things start getting through, because then you have to actually develop some defenses in response to that.
Yeah. And so as soon as we've seen this trend in our data, the content team at Hoxhunt created also both phishing simulations and training content about this topic, right? So that we can keep in touch with the landscape and make sure again that we train people about what matters.
That's great. You're always doing a great job keeping us safe from the latest and greatest threats.
Yeah, so this is an example at least of one of these SVG campaign work. It starts with sometimes the SVG file is the attachment directly, but in this example, actually, it starts with a phishing email with no attachment, easier to get through the filters. And there's a link, and the link in this email brings to share file, where on share file, there's a link to download this SVG. And when you download this SVG and open it, and there's a prompt that asks for a password that is in the email. And when you type this password, you get to the credential harvester. So I think what's really just interesting there is that there's quite a few steps, which might limit the number of people will actually go through all the steps, but makes it a lot less likely to be blocked. And that's why this is the kind of email that, again, bypass security solutions and that people get to experience.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for breaking that down for us.
And that's another new research that will be published along with the SVG article. So some differences between Microsoft and Google environment. So it's more anecdotic, I would say, but some things that I found interesting in this table. First is that we see that on the Google environment, there's 12% of the reports that were done by our users that were actual malicious emails. And in the Microsoft environment, it was 34.7%. And I'm not 100% sure where it comes from, but it's such a big difference that I wanted to point it out. It could be the result of factors such as maybe the filtering in Gmail just being better. It could be the fact that there's just a very different type of phishing emails sent between these environments, or a different type of variance in user tenure and reporting skills also in these environments. But that was an interesting finding. And then, so we see that it's not exactly also the same type of scams that we see in those two environments. For Google, it was mostly DocuSign and SaaS applications, but no Microsoft application, obviously. While in the Microsoft environment, what we see a lot are the Microsoft impersonations and all those Office 365, SharePoint, Planner type of emails, as well as a lot more also HR and payroll related type of impersonations.
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, it's important when you're developing your training, I think, to understand your whole email environment and to protect against the biggest threats that are really relevant to your environment and to your stack. So, if you don't mind, if you'll indulge me, I did want to look at this really briefly today before we head off and around into the end of this webinar here. I find this data fascinating. You know, over 100 years ago, the famous bank robber, John Dillinger, when he was asked why he robs banks, he said, because that's where the money's at. And cyber criminals are like modern day bank robbers. But the fact that it's not just banks and financial institutions that are getting hit speaks to the complexity of the cybercrime industry. We are seeing some significant changes in the rankings of the industries that had the most malicious emails in their environments in 2025. We don't really know why these changes are taking place. We can speculate, but let's save the industry deep dive for another show. But for now, Maxime, you've worked in several industries. and large enterprises in those industries. What can you tell us about why certain industries might be more targeted than others?
Yeah, so what we need to understand is that the cyber criminals target typically where the money is, right? Their goal is financial. While we do have some nation state backed groups that might have geopolitical motivations, the huge majority of attacks, as per Verizon, IBM, and my own experience, are profit driven. Attackers will want to go for the industries where they think they're going to have the best results, right? And actually get people to click and or get the emails through and get people to click and get people to give their credentials or pay ransom. So for this reason, there's a bit of a it's why it's a bit difficult to analyze the ranking is that certain industries like finance obviously have a lot of money, but they also have more mature security postures. So probably why they find themselves in the middle of the table, and other industries like retail and healthcare, maybe attackers have found that they can get higher click rates there, more threats to get through the filters and higher click rates. So yeah, what's important just to keep in mind is that hackers will continue to go for where they get the best results, right? They're not stupid and continuing something that doesn't work. So if they see that something works and they can get money there, they'll continue and increase their tactics towards that industry or using a specific technique that works.
Yeah, good breakdown. And sure, I mean, attackers think of themselves as business people. They approach this whole thing the way that a marketer would approach a large campaign. How do you get the most ROI with the least amount of expenditure and effort and the lowest amount of risk? So I know that there's been, I think the IBM report for the 14th year in a row found that healthcare had the highest cost per breach. Healthcare has been getting hit pretty hard in the media. They've been showing that. But yeah, this is some I found to be these industry rankings I just find to be really interesting. Okay, so we're rounding into the end of our session today. This has been really, really great stuff. But if there's one takeaway, it's that the threat landscape is changing every day, and you'll have to change with it. And those who do will have a huge advantage if your human risk management solutions can adapt just as fast as the threat landscape. So, Maxime, please tell us about this exciting feature.
Yes, so for people who have been following us or using us for a while, you know that Hoxhunt has already helped millions of people worldwide to stay safe with individually customized email training, right? Our phishing simulation programs are individualized. Everyone in the organization goes on their own training path based on their skill level, job function, and geography. But recently, in the past few months, we've released 2 new AI agents in this fight, kind of AI against AI, to be able to improve on that training. And this agent, the first one, the spear-phishing agent, he goes further and he uses AI to create hyper-personalized simulations on the fly that are uniquely tailored to each employee, just like we saw, with the OSINT and spear-phishing before. So instead of just picking, a simulation within our library, it will actually create something specifically for that employee based on everything we know about that employee. And the second agent, the agentic reasoning engine, is really interesting because what it adds is that it's also going to look at the threat landscape global in your industry, in your organization, and again, adapt the threats that are the simulation, and training that is going to be sent to every employee based on the threat landscape, right? And choosing what is the most relevant for your industry and for your organization based on the real reports that we have there. And you can set some additional grounding rules to help it decide kind of what kind of things you want to train people about. So I think this really significantly expands the way we train people about phishing to train them better in terms of more personalization and training about what really matters in the threat landscape.
Fantastic. And we started with a little bit of good news. Maybe we'll end with a little good news. Maxime, when you think about all the different programs that you've been involved with, What do these numbers say to you that you find to be particularly encouraging?
Yeah, so first, thanks for the good news again, Elliot. And I think a few things. First, the engagement is fantastic to see that 2/3 of people actually reported not only simulations, but real suspicious threats, right? It shows that the culture change. Right? It's not just about training, it's not just about completion or doing good at training. It shows that people change their behavior and care about reporting something if it will make them and make the organization safer. And the time it takes to the fastest user to report a threat, I think I'm always impressed to see that it takes less than a minute to get the threats reported, which is obviously a fantastic thing for the security operations team who can then take action and block the threats for everyone else. So great to get the good news. And again, there is such a thing as a bad and good training, and the way we do training really matters and will influence the outcomes.
Excellent. Okay, everybody, that is the end of our show today. Thank you, Maxime, for joining us and for sharing your expertise. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you, Elliot. And thanks everyone for joining. Have a great day.
Have a great day.